people. Welcome back to another soulful session of Mondays with Mondene. This is where we dive deep into the rhythms of life. You know, we need some jazz music right there. Love and liberty, y'all. You know, smooth as a giant. And I'm your host, E.D. Mondene. We're ready to groove through this, the beats of this week with you and without you, some of you, and we're going to do it right now today. We're getting real about the big change that's coming to Portland city government. So pick up that chicken leg and pass the potatoes while we engage in what I want to call dinner talk. Tonight we have a very special guest. He's joining us tonight, and his name is called something. It's Bob Weinstein, a candidate running for the Portland City Council in the upcoming elections, 2024. And guess what? He's already got my vote. But before we dive into our conversation with Bob, I want to take a moment to talk about the significance of this election. It's important. As many of you know, the 2024 Portland City Council elections, they're going to be different. They're going to be historic. They're going to be bright, big, bold, and beautiful with the new implementation of a new form of government. Not just 4 city councilors, but we're going to have 12. Wow. And a proportionally ranked choice voting system. This election marks a pivotal moment for our city's future. Now that we said all of that, let's turn our attention to our guest for tonight, Bob Weinstein. He's always been deeply involved in local affairs since moving to Portland in 2018. He's been an advocate for pedestrian safety, preserving neighborhood associations, and addressing the city's growing problems. Bob brings a wealth of experience to his candidacy, having served on the Ketchikan, Alaska City Council and as mayor for 4 terms. He's also worked in education as a superintendent and chaired an educational funding task force, leading to increased school funding approval by the Alaska legislature. Those are accomplishments that are hard to get through. Bob, we want to welcome you to Mondays with Mondene. Well, and what is a pleasure to have you on our show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me tonight.
You know, this salt and pepper is what we're going to need. You know, I think that we're in trouble in the United States, and it's going to take the baby boomers to lead the millennials. The millennials are going to have to do the, what is that after that? The Generation Xers?
Or Zs?
No, the Zs are the ones those are the ones that are almost 20 now, okay? But it's going to take this whole catch-a-can of people to motivate the future. And it's going to be people like you and I who have to drive those folks towards that. And I tell you what, we're fortunate to have somebody with the kind of educational prowess that you have in politics to take some direction from, because it's going to be a mell of a hess coming into a new system that we are creating in the Portland City government. Hey, Bob, what inspired you to run for the Portland City Council, and what do you hope to achieve if you're elected?
Well, I'm running for the city council because I think Portland needs a course correction. Portland has failed to address some of the key problems in the community that are on the minds of many people: public safety, homelessness, transportation, spending and taxes. So 2024, as you stated, gives the voters an opportunity to change direction for our community and to elect a new city council. All 12 seats are up this fall, and this is a great opportunity for people to get out and support a change of direction in Portland. As you noted, I have years of experience in leadership roles, and I would like to think that I could help the new city council with those skills and with my experience.
So being mayor 4 times, you've learned how to tell people no. And when they don't hear no real well, you've learned how to tell them, Hell no. So
Let me just say that as both a school superintendent and then later as a city council member, and then, as you noted, mayor for 12 years, I've had to make some tough decisions.
Yeah.
Don't always please everybody.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues that have people on both sides, and you have to
Yeah.
do your best to both look at the facts, to listen to people, and then make the best decision you can, knowing that some people will be unhappy with your decision.
So we have to be a little bit of Moses. We have to learn how to split the baby and keep it alive, right? With your experience in local government, and you do have a lot, and education and the atmosphere there, how do you plan to address the city's growing problems, particularly concerning livability for all the citizens? It's a big issue right now.
It's a huge issue, and I think we need to do a couple things. We need to step back and look at how the city is spending money. The city has a lot of money. They spend a lot on they spend perhaps even more not so well. So we have to look at what are priorities that the voters and the residents of the varied neighborhoods throughout Portland want. What's important to them, and then focus the spending to meet what the people are telling us are important.
Yeah, I've heard several times in the last cycle about the overages and the underages and the moving money from here to there and everywhere. And it's never been stable, and it's not what the people have voted for. And that's scary. So when you've got an out-of-control government, you've got an out-of-control people, especially when you're talking about a metropolitan government, the inner core that really affects the outer shell of everything that's around us, even our governor's office. So it's important that the city governments be intact to understand how to really deliberate and yield to the people. What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree with that. I think the city needs a better way of listening to people.
Yeah.
My experience with the city is if you're talking to somebody in one of the bureaus or a council member and they don't agree with you, you'll never hear from them. Minds seem to be made up before a public process instead of during and after a public process. And I think that needs to change.
Well, see, that speaks to your advocacy work. And that brings us right into the next question. Tell us more about your advocacy for pedestrian safety and neighborhood associations, and how you, especially neighborhood associations, and how you plan to continue these efforts in the city council. Neighborhood associations are important.
They are very important. My first interaction with the city government, of all things, had to do with e-scooters when in 2018 PBOT approved a pilot program. And one of their rules was no riding on sidewalks, for good reason, because there's pedestrians on the sidewalk and there's senior citizens, there's people with visual and physical impairments on the sidewalks. Unfortunately, PBOT did not enforce its own rules. And I tried to talk to PBOT. I sent photos and movies of people riding scooters on sidewalks almost into other people. Somebody who knew I was working on that sent me a photo of a visually impaired person on a sidewalk who was almost run over from behind by 4 or 5 people going as fast as they could on a scooter. So PBOT and the commissioner in charge at the time, Chloe Daly, apparently didn't care. But
we just had one of our legendary artist. I wish I could think of his name. He was hit, and he was in his scooter, and I think that he was on the sidewalk, and I think he was run over. I can't get the whole story, but it just comes to mind. Maybe we'll dig it up and we'll talk about it later.
So getting into neighborhood associations, and
Okay.
I certainly agree with you. They're very important. There's 90 plus neighborhood associations, each reflecting the uniqueness of their neighborhoods. They've been supported by the city for 50 years until recent years, where the support has diminished for a number of reasons. But again, during Chloe Daly's term as a commissioner, she tried to rewrite the code that pertain to neighborhood associations to eliminate them. So I didn't know a whole lot about neighborhood associations when I first got here, but the planning committee for the Northwest Neighborhood Association, which is my area, happened to meet across the street every Thursday morning. So I started showing up at their meetings. They'd be sitting at tables talking about issues, and this guy would be in the corner just watching. And finally they asked me what I was doing there, and I introduced myself and said I'm here to learn quickly about what are some issues in our neighborhood, and this seems to be a great forum. So when later there was the effort to eliminate city support for neighborhood associations,
which was crazy.
Some of those people got me involved. I went to some meetings to object to that, and we were successful. I was certainly not a leader in that. I want to make that very clear. I was just one of many people who supported those who were leading the charge.
Well, let me challenge that way of thinking. You were one of the ones that were leading because you were there. And I think that this is one of the problems that we're facing in America. We are no longer saying we the people. And I think that that's where the problem is going to be solved. And so we need somebody with the strong energy and understanding to know that it's going to take we, the people, to take the lead. You didn't, you weren't given the title as leader, but you understood that the power in the community is a power that, you know, kind of expresses itself outward and just makes waves. So, dude, you bring an important element to this situation.
Well, thank you. And then the next issue that I was actively involved in had to do with the charter that ultimately was approved by the voters in 2022. I was part of a group called the Partnership for Common Sense Government. We supported changes to the charter, but not the changes that were recommended as a package by the Charter Commission. So I'm very familiar with the new charter that will be implemented, and I'm very knowledgeable about how the current city council is going about trying to implement it.
We're going to need a lot of help. How do you envision the transition to the new form of government? That was a good segue into that, impacting the future of Portland.
Yeah, you know, I think the transition in and of itself would have been difficult and have some kind of a learning curve. I don't think the current city council is helping that one bit. The current city council has decided to approve an administrative structure for the new government, with not only the city administrator that was approved or that was a concept in the charter to have city administrator run the departments, not each council member. That makes a lot of sense, and something that I and the group I was involved with supported. So they're having, in addition to the administrator, an assistant. That makes sense, but they're going to be hiring 6 deputy city administrators now. And I went to a city council meeting yesterday because they're going to be hiring some on a temporary basis for no more than a year. Well, there was a proposal yesterday to have in their contracts a 6-month severance clause. So if they worked for 6 months or a year, each of them would get $209,000 of tax money. That's $1,254,000 for temporary people. And as I said to the council yesterday, and I said it to them in November, you should leave those decisions up to the new council. You should not be saddling the new mayor and the new council with, you know, a number of new people, a number of new offices. And at the same time, they are talking about originally budgeting for 2 staffers for each council member and 2 offices. So they recently reduced the number of staffers a council member will get to 1, but have 2 offices. So as I said to them yesterday, it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to have only one staffer, and I'll get back to that in a second, and have 2 offices because one of the 2 is going to be empty all the time.
Well,
and
I'm counting 32 new people.
We're going to be paying rent. So part of my background after I ended being the mayor, I worked for a U.S. Senator, Mark Begich of Alaska, and I was a member of his state staff. So I worked in Ketchikan, and a good deal of my role was constituent work. If somebody had a problem with the federal government, they could call me, email me, come to my office. Sometimes I would email the D.C. office. I got the emails, Bob, this is for you to work out. So I think I have a lot of knowledge about how to best work with constituents. And I can tell you, having only one staffer is a disservice to the voters of this community. There is no way a city council member will be able to effectively carry out their responsibilities and their roles if you have one staffer who's answering the phone, scheduling meetings, attending meetings for the council member because maybe the council member is at another meeting, and responding to constituents and resolving issues. It can't be done.
So you see yourself in this transition as a leader and as a... How do you see yourself in this transition?
Well, in the transition itself, I guess I see myself as somewhat of a critic of what the city council is doing now. They should leave a number of those decisions. It's fine for them to say, hey, new council and mayor, we think you should structure the new administration this way, but they should not be implementing it. The charter is not effective until January 1. And as I said, they're talking about hiring people as temporary employees, but giving them very lavish severance packages on the way out the door. And to me, that's a slap in the face to the taxpayers of the community and to the many people who work for the city, regardless of departments. Police and firefighters don't get any severance. Why should some temporary, well-compensated City Hall bureaucrats get a huge payment on the way out the door?
You know, the exodus of city businesses downtown, does that make you, what do you think about that?
I think that's a serious problem. And I think part of it is the council spending time worrying about the next government instead of doing their jobs as the current government. We have businesses leaving. We need to improve what we do in public safety, not only the police, firefighters, Portland Street Response, and become more responsive to the people of Portland. I think people are very concerned about public safety, whether it's the level of crime or theft. That's why some businesses are leaving. There was just an article, I think in Willamette Week, about Southeast businesses are being vandalized repeatedly. And, small businesses are the backbone of our community.
They're the backbone of our country.
Right. And if they're closing or if they're being threatened because of criminal activity, something needs to be done to address that.
What do you think about the Portland Business Chamber, the Portland Business Alliance? How do you see yourself effectively working with the Portland Business Chamber to bring about the kind of changes that
I think I'm capable, and in my experience, I've worked with a lot of different groups. We had a very active Chamber of Commerce in Ketchikan. I know some of the members of the Portland, I think they call it Metro Chamber now.
Yeah.
But I also know a number of small business people, and I support small businesses. I support large businesses. Without large businesses, we wouldn't have the number of employees that we have, who then go downtown or to Kenton or wherever and shop, go to restaurants, and it's important that we have a good mix of the small and large businesses in our community, and we should do whatever we can to encourage them to be here and to encourage them to stay here.
You're really a jewel to our community. Given your experience in Alaska, up in good old Ketchikan, what unique perspectives or approaches do you bring to address Portland's challenges, and how do you see them similarly? Because everything is a similar.
Well, right.
We're losing our skirt.
And I will say that, Ketchikan had some of the same issues that Portland has. Certainly on a smaller scale. People were concerned about taxes. People were concerned about public safety. We had a homeless problem in Ketchikan, not immune from that. Smaller scale, we still addressed it. And we addressed it by talking to people who knew how to resolve problems and had suggestions for showing us what kinds of things work. Portland likes to do everything on its own as if we're unique, that nobody else, no other city has the same problems that we do.
Yeah.
That's just not true. The city of Portland has spent, the city of Portland itself, since 2015, has spent $1.7 billion to address the homeless problem, affordable housing, homeless. That's billion with a B. And the number of homeless has gone from 2,000 to 6,000. It's not just a city problem. Obviously, the county has, I don't want to say jurisdiction, but runs the joint homeless problem. The point I'm trying to make, if you're spending a lot of money and the problem's not only not getting better, but getting worse, you need to think of what else is happening in other communities. Mm-hmm. And one example is Houston has an office of what they call coordinated access. So if there's a nonprofit group that wants Houston money, they go through that office, and what they do is just make sure that they're not funding 10 groups to do the same thing. One group might be doing one thing, another group might be doing something else with a minimal of overlap. I don't think people in the city and county know what's going on in Portland. There's just no data.
And you're right. And we have to address that. There's so many things that we need to address. One of the things that is really important is that the African American community in Portland, it ranks very small in terms of its population. How do you have any plan on how you're going to connect with that community, or?
Let me just say, while I'm here to talk, I'm also here to learn, Pastor Mondene. And what I would do is turn to people like you and say, can you tell me what the city can do for the African American community or other marginalized communities in town? I'm not going to tell you. I know what's best. I would ask you, can you tell me what is best?
Because when we stir from the bottom, everybody rises. So, what message do you have for the voters of Portland as they consider their choices in this historic election? What message do you have?
Well, I have a couple things. I would say that
preach to us.
Support candidates who you think can help solve problems, and I think I have the ability to do that. I think I have the background and leadership and policy making, not to tell people that I have the answers, but I know how to find how to get answers, number one. Number two, and I think this is more critical, we have an entirely new city council and mayor and auditor being elected. Mm-hmm. It's very important that people vote. That's the most important thing that people can do in 2024 to try to assure that they have a city council that will listen to them and truly represent them. So I would, again, urge people to get educated on the new version, rarely used in the United States. It's called single transferable vote of ranked choice voting. Single transferable voting.
I'm glad he had to say it. Say it one more time.
I can't say it 3 times in a row. I can tell you.
We'll put it on the screen.
But it's called single transferable voting.
You heard it.
It's a version of ranked choice voting, and it's used in one jurisdiction in the United States out of 19,500 voting jurisdictions.
Wow.
Cambridge, Massachusetts, just down the street where I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts. And it requires normal rank choice that we'll use for mayor and the auditor is you need 50% plus 1 to win.
Yeah.
This is 25% plus 1 to win. And it's very complicated. I'm not going to sit here and go through the math with you, but I can tell you that when the Charter Commission itself met with the editorial board of Willamette Week came out in opposition to it because they got 3 different answers in the same meeting to how this form of voting works from the people who recommended it to the voters.
Yeah.
And one of the Charter Commission members, he happens to be running for city council, is famously quoted as saying, "You don't have to know how the voting works. It's like a car engine. It just does." Well, I think people have to know, especially in this day and age, how the voting works and how their votes will be counted.
Especially now.
Especially now, exactly.
This is a troubling time. You know what? It has been so good and so refreshing having you here. How do we get in touch with you? Tell us about...
Well, you can get in touch with me. I have a website. It's bobforportland.com, F-O-R, not the number 4, bobforportland.com. That's my website. You can learn more about me. You can look at what I think are the important issues facing Portland. And also, if you're so inclined, you can make a donation through my website.
How much you want? I got you right there.
I'm like most council members and the mayoral candidates. I'm in what the city calls the small donor election program.
Yeah.
So the city, if it was fully funded, would match the first $20 of any donation by 9 to 1. So if somebody gives me $20, the city would give $180. So I'm looking for small donations from people. But I'm also hoping that people will, aside from that, look at the website, look at the issues that I think are important and that I read day after day in the paper that people in the community think are important. And again, public safety, homelessness, transportation, livability, and the economics. We need to make sure the city is doing what it can to make sure everybody in this community thrives economically.
Now listen, are you available to speak in small groups?
Sure.
And so we get in touch with you through your website?
Well, you can that's one way. I have an email on there, contact info at bobforportland.com. So
listen, let's book him in some of your special book clubs and some of your gatherings and at a local coffee shop. You know what to do. Thanks for joining us, Bob. And there you have it, folks. And the beat goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. And it's up to us to keep the rhythm of democracy alive. And we have to keep it kicking. Let's do this together. Together we can make a change. It is you and I together, we the people. And until next time, stay groovy, baby. Stay woke and keep spreading that love. This is ED. And as we wrap up today's episode, we want to thank all y'all that tuned in tonight. We invite you to engage in conversation. Share your thoughts and information as we navigate the evolving landscape that creates the fabric for us to sew together. Now, thank you for joining us on Mondays with Mondine. And as the curtain falls, the economy is a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Join the conversation, spill your thoughts, and stay tuned for the next episode of Mondays with Mondine. Thanks for vibing with us. I'm ED signing off. Oh, before I leave, I got some other stuff to say. A special shout out to our sponsors. Poshine's not just a restaurant, but it's an institution located at 8139 North Denver, right here in Kenton, and it's got good food. You can expect the best soul food this side of the Willamette. We got Aunties and Tonties daycare services, Adorn Electric, the folks that light up your life. And I'm grateful for their support on this podcast. You can visit me right here on Sunday mornings at Celebration Tabernacle in Portland, Oregon. A special thank you to our technical staff, Dion, Robin, Andy, and Paul. Not one of them is bigger than the other, and although they're short, They all stand tall. These guys are what makes this podcast possible. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and your followers. It's important. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a thing with Mondays with Mondene. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, right there. You see it, right? And on YouTube, it's the other fellow right there. And join us for the talk. Until then, babies, yeah. Hey, gang, I've got exciting news. I've just finished my memoirs, and writing them was, wow, a roller coaster, but I'm glad that I did it for me and for you, and it's a way to get to know Edie Mondene just a little bit better. What you thought you knew, you didn't know. It's called From Maladies to Melodies, growing up in the South St. Louis projects, and what God has done in my life even to this day. I'm excited to share it with you. Please look for it coming real soon.
Hey, it's time for you to come to Post Shine. Check out that catfish sandwich. Oh my goodness, is that the shrimp po' boy? Man, look at that chocolate chip cake. Man, I need to get over to Post Shine's at 8139 North Denver right now because this food looks delicious. Or call if you'd like, 503-978-9000. And don't miss it, you'll be sorry.
In times gone past, we find ourselves making excuses so that people reminded, ooh, I've got to get home and tend to the brand new missus. I need some time alone. Can't this wait until I finish texting on my phone?